Joining me is Mr. Yogendra Yadav. He has been a former UGC member. Thank you, Mr. Yadav, for taking the time out. My first question, what do you make of the new UGC guidelines, sir, which are mandatory?
There used to be a theory of manufactured consent, which is how regimes manufacture agreements. But this instance is an instance of manufactured dissent. How a regime is trying to cultivate dissent against its own decision so that it can be diluted. This is very interesting because in the entire debate, all the basic facts are being ignored. The impression is that somehow this government and the UGC has, for the first time, come out with something draconian, something that deals with the caste question, which is anti-discriminatory. All this is complete lie. The simple fact is anti-discrimination is part of our constitution. And in order to fulfill it, in 2012, since 2012, UGC has had a regulation. There is nothing new about it. Number two, the previous regulations talked about caste. The recent one talks about caste. Nothing new about it. Number three, this regulation is not just for caste. It is for gender. It is for physical disability. It is for all forms of disadvantages and discrimination. And number four, this regime is doing nothing on its own. It would be strange if this regime were to suddenly become so conscious on social justice. The simple fact is there is a case in the Supreme Court, which has been going on since 2019, which has forced and directed the government to make changes in the previous regulation, which is being implemented. But the trouble is that because the UGC and this government doesn't want to do what the Supreme Court is forcing it to do, therefore they are manufacturing a dissent, manufacturing an outrage, so that they can say, oh my God, there is backlash. We have to reconsider it. That is the political game that we are looking at.
Mr. Yadav, these charges are rather grave because what you seem to insinuate is that the government is manufacturing dissent through protest, through certain communities, and pushing them to protest to do away with the regulations that you seem to suggest that the government was forced to bring in at the behest of the top court.
Preeti, I'm not insinuating. May I request you and your correspondents to please check the social profile of each of the persons who is opposing it. Find out what their views about this regime, Mr. Modi, RSS, and BJP are, and then you would not say insinuating. This is a simple fact. The simple fact is that all those who are opposing this regulation and creating this backlash are actually pro-regime. And isn't that very surprising? And the second thing is, let's simply check the simple facts of the case, which is what I'm trying to present to you. To my mind, the discussion should not be about how draconian this particular regulations are. The real question that we should be discussing is how it has been diluted. The 2012 regulations have been strengthened in one respect because of the directions of the Supreme Court. The institutional mechanism for dealing with anti-discrimination has indeed been strengthened, and it should be welcomed. Earlier, there was no appeal outside the institution. Now there is an appeal outside the institution. Earlier, the timelines were loose. Now the timelines are strong. Earlier, the UGC was not doing an oversight. Now the UGC is doing oversight. All these are changes dictated by the Supreme Court, which should be welcomed. However, the core definition of what is discrimination, the earlier regulations were very concrete about it, about the kind of discrimination, the kind of harassment that could take place in an educational context. Unfortunately, all that has been removed from the new regulations. That is what we should be discussing. A regime which is not known to be pro-social justice, which drags its feet, was forced to do something, did it half-heartedly, and is now engineering a protest so that it doesn't have to do even that half-hearted measures. That is the true story.
let's talk about the new regulations that you want to speak of, Mr. Yadav. The general perception coming in from the protesters is that one is trying to address discrimination by bringing in more discrimination by the virtue of these new norms.
Preeti, you would have known all these things. The moment you have a law about dowry, what is the protest? Oh my God, it is against men. The moment you have a law addressing racial discrimination in the US, what is the general impression? Oh my God, white people are being discriminated against. This always happens when you have any law that deals with social justice. The powerful always protest by saying that they are victims. Is there something surprising about it? As a matter of fact, if you look at those regulations, these regulations are nowhere the kind of very strong acts, for example, the Anti-Rape Act or the Anti-Dowry Act, which are very, very strong and leave the accused with very few options. There is nothing of that kind in the regulations. There are three kinds of appeal, and the onus of proving the guilt is not shifted onto the accused. So these are very normal regulations. And if our country is not to simply implement the anti-discriminatory intent and fundamental right of the Constitution, what else are we supposed to do?
All right, Mr. Yadav, thank you for joining us.